Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog Series. It's Tuesday, June 16th, 2026. And I'd like to offer a little coda to my thoughts and reflections piece from yesterday on your creative gifts and global consciousness. Roy T. Bennett wrote in his book, The Light of the Heart, quote, "Instead of worrying about what you cannot control, shift your energy to what you can create," end quote. And that quote in large part captures the essence of what I was trying to convey in yesterday's vlog. We spend far too much time not only worrying about stuff that's beyond our control, but also just worrying in general, or allowing our worries and anxieties, and sometimes just the worst of our impulses to take over, to consume us. Sometimes right from the start each day. And we end up wasting so much of our time and precious energy. I've done that a bit myself recently. I haven't always taken my own advice. To be honest, I've been struggling in recent weeks, or really the past month, worrying a lot about different things, not being able to sleep particularly well, sometimes being a bit grumpy. And for example, I went so far as to write an email to complain to IT about their relative lack of responsiveness to a telephone request that I made last week. I wanted to resolve a problem I'd had with not being able to log on to the university website. But the person on the helpline told me I'd have to submit a formal written request. I then asked if there was anybody else I could speak with about the problem. And so they got a supervisor, someone a little bit higher up, and they basically told me the same thing. I'd have to submit a formal request, and then they'd try to get back to me later in the day. So out of frustration, for the first time in my 23 years at King's, I filed a complaint about the folks in IT. Thing is that I've always gotten along great with those people. I've always worked well with them, supported their initiatives. They've always been supportive of me as well. But I guess the weight of so many things converged last week, and I allowed myself to actually type up a complaint and push send. But why? Again, I was struggling with a few things myself, and so that's part of the answer. But also it was last Thursday, and the reason I needed to get onto the website was to check out the convocation schedule for the rest of the day, locations, time, etc., because I plan to attend. And so if they'd only gotten back to me later in the day, then that really wouldn't have helped. And plus, as it turns out, the fix was actually quite simple. I just go into my settings, click on a couple of buttons, and clear the cookies in my cache folder. And voila, literally the help person or the supervisor, if they knew this quick fix, they could have explained it to me in one sentence. Boom, done. Instead, we wasted energy on the protocol to request help. I didn't get the help that I needed while on the helpline. And then I wasted more of my own time sending this, and their time sending this stupid little complaint in. And then another guy in IT, who's always been amazing, by the way, just sent me a quick email about an hour later, and I resolved the problem instantly. So once again, I'm reminded of Bennett's quote, "Instead of worrying about what you cannot control, shift your energy to what you can create." The thing is, we sometimes do need the help of others to continue along our respective creative pathways, our life journey. So for example, I'd never have been able to complete my debut album without the help, first and foremost, of my son, Caleb, aka CX Violet, who ended up being a creative collaborator on the entire album, as well as a key musician, sound engineer, the mixer, the producer of my album 62 Since 62. And I can't ignore either the support of my wife with the project from start to finish, to say nothing of our sons and so many others who inspired and helped me out along the way. And I think that's the source of my lingering frustration at times. In other words, it's a core principle that certainly my wife and I try to follow and try to live by, that involves trying as best we can to be helpful towards others, to reach out in small ways on a regular basis. And one of my problems is that maybe you have this issue as well, is that sometimes I get a bit frustrated or annoyed if others don't reciprocate for whatever reasons. And yet that, of course, happens all the time in our daily lives. And I still struggle, at least sometimes, with people who choose not to be helpful. But ultimately, though, that's really more my problem rather than their fault. The person who answered the helpline, for example, surprised me because they couldn't give me a quick answer or quick advice on this particular issue. And I've always been used to the IT folks being so incredibly helpful and responsive. But upon reflection, I'll just speculate. I'll guess that the person who picked up last week maybe was a student doing a placement or brand new to the position, or probably hadn't even completed their training. I didn't recognize the voice. But same thing with the next person up, whom they asked. And that person too, the whole IT team was already overwhelmed with stuff that was happening at the university and what was happening with convocation more generally. And so from their perspective, they couldn't be as responsive as they might normally have been. So I should have recognized and accepted that from the outset. And I'm pretty good metaphorically at walking in other people's shoes, but I wasn't last week, or at least not on that occasion. And I allowed myself instead to shift my energy to the negative, or away from what I could do that might be constructive, creative. And I guess that's the ultimate point of this little coda vlog on our creative gifts. If you find yourself starting to move away from your creative side and maybe going down that pathway of worry and complaint and negativity, try to stop, assess, think for a moment. Try to see the whole picture. And again, start looking for creative solutions, perhaps. If a critical situation requires that you actually expend energy to deal with a real or immediate threat or problem, by all means, absolutely, you have to do that. But if you deduce that some people aren't helpful or can't give you what you need or what have you, try not to dwell on the negative, on the roadblocks, and try to be a bit more understanding and forgiving if possible, and waste as little energy of yours as possible focusing on the negative, on the frustrations, on what couldn't be accomplished, and instead shift back, as I said, into your more creative and problem-solving mindset. Direct your energy as best you can to focus on what you can create in every moment. You'll see a difference in your own perspective, in your own emotional state and happiness right away. And people will also feel the impact of your creative gift right away as well. It's almost guaranteed. And if nothing else, try to spend more of your time thanking people for what they are able to do as opposed to what they're not able to do. You follow? And being grateful for their time, genuinely for their time, and for your blessings, and for the chance to be here. I'm reminded of what Leanne Womack sang way back in 2000, "May you never take one single breath for granted," from her song, "I Hope You Dance." And so as ever, until next time, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, dole out hugs in abundance, and indeed, I hope you dance. I hope to see you soon.